Hi guys, welcome to another beer review, and today we're delving once again into week one of Brewdog's Fanzine project, which is a fortnightly subscription service where you get 3 beers each fortnight for £11, and that includes postage. And yeah, I think that's an interesting deal. And I've already reviewed one of them, which was the Zephyr, which I've already preserved and mounted the label because I'm sad like that, hence why I'm wearing the soy boy beanie of shame today. And if I had a brewer jacket, I'd be wearing that as well, but I just don't. So even though I was supposed to be doing sort of live reviews with Jake and Craig, circumstance has stopped that from happening. Plus, I was really in the mood for a beer today with the weather that we've been having, even though it's nighttime now, so it's gone a little bit gloomy. But yeah, so I thought I'd dive into the second one. And this time we're looking at the Jet Trash version 1 West Coast IPA, clocking in at 6.9% ABV. So it's easier for me to read the ingredients on this little zine-like photocopied, printed on card sort of thing. And basically the malts are Pale, Munich, Dextrin and Cara Red. The kettle hops are Cascade and Columbus. The Whirlpool hops are Cascade and Centennial. And then it's dry hopped with Citra, Simcoe, Cascade, Chinook and Mosaic. So quite a hoppy brew by all accounts. And I'll quickly read you what it says about the beer itself. Buckle up and head out west. This straight-up West Coast IPA is the first incarnation of Jet Trash. It boasts supersized sea hop aromas and bags of citrus fruity flavour, backed up with a toasty malt base. Jet Trash, pre-boarding now. And then it tells you about the fanzine project, which I covered in both the unboxing video and the first review of the series. So yeah, Jet Trash, a West Coast IPA. Another reason why, and in fact I should get my hipster scarf at the ready, because I'm bucking the trend, because it's all about the juice nowadays. And I've got to say, I really love a good palate-wrecking resin bomb of a West Coast IPA. Of course, this I don't think will be one of those. I mean, it is, well, mind you, 65 IBUs is still quite high in this day and age of, you know, fruit juice, which I do like. Don't get me wrong, when it's done right, it can be one of the most satisfying styles. But I do love a good, classic, resiny, hoppy West Coast IPA. And hopefully this one delivers. So without any further ado, let's get the can opened and see what we get. So using the Brewdog Teku once again. And there we go. Pouring that into the glass. So beer in the glass then, and it's got a lovely sort of dark caramelly look to it with a bit of golden amber hue. It is clear. It's got that sort of like quintessential Brewdog look to it. Just something I can't really put into words and describe properly, but it just reminds me of what a Brewdog beer looks like. And really no head to speak of, so let's see if we can... You know, I've been doing this on camera for a few years now, and I've still not mastered a proper way to swirl the glass without it spilling everywhere or just being rocked back and forth. But yeah, not really cause too much of a head anyway. So, let's give it a sniff. Oh, that's nice and dank. It's got all of that sort of like sea hop character to it. Big, big hit of the Cascade. One of my all-time favourite hops. But it's got that sort of like dank, fruity, tropical tone in there. Definitely resiny. Big citrus fruit character. It's got like that classic Brewdog whiff. It reminds me of like what beers like hardcore IPA used to smell like when I was getting into Brewdog. It's taking me back, do you know what I mean? Orange juice in there. Big grapefruit character. Very herbal. It's got that slight oniony, garlicky, caramelised tone. It's like, yeah, it's so familiar, but it's a refreshing change from all the, you know, pineapple juice, peachy, yogurty, milkshakey, triple dry hopped, you know, those sorts of beers. And it's got that lovely balance of like citrusy, hoppy, and then savoury in there, with a little bit of sweetness thrown in. Yeah, it's classic. It's reminding me of when I was really getting into craft beer, when, you know, the American West Coast IPAs were a really big thing, and the UK breweries were trying to replicate those sorts of beers. It smells lovely. Let's give it a taste. Cheers, guys. Gotta say, quite medicinal. It reminds me, I can't remember what IPA it was, but there was a Westbrook IPA that I tried a few years back. And big on that like medicinal herbal tone sort of character. The body is light, actually. The weird thing is, when I was drinking the Zephyr, which had an IBU count of 10, that felt like it was a lot bitter than it was. This, I'm not getting that 65 IBUs with it. It's earthy, it's herbal. It's got that sort of like lemsip, honey lemon locket sort of cough sweet flavour to it. It's not the resin bomb that I was hoping for. It's hit the nail on like West Coast, but it tastes like one of those like West Coast IPAs from back in the day brought over to the States that was maybe just a little too old. Not to the point where it was a malt bomb by any stretch, but just where, yeah, with all of those hops thrown in there, I was expecting it to be a bit more hoppy without sounding like a dick. I mean, it's a lovely, pleasant beer, but the like the hoppiness on the back end and the IBUs, although not really strong, they've got this sort of like menthol slash like, what's that word called? Like alcohol, like pure alcohol flavour. A little bit of grapefruit in there. Ethanol, that's what I was thinking of. It sort of reminded me of I recently did, with Beer 52, they did a European version of Cascade in a IPA, and they used the same recipe and put the American variation of Cascade in. And of course, the American, I always think of Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale, which to me is like the way to incorporate and utilise the Cascade hop. That to me is just like, it's like the Cascade hop beer for me personally. I know beer snobs and aficionados will look down on that statement, but to me that's just like a classic. It's like one of those fundamentals in brewing. And this is sort of reminded me, it's got that sort of like earthy breadiness that the more vegetative European Cascade hop gives, but it's still got that slight like citrusy, fruity edge. There is a dankness coming there, very subtle tropical tones, which I would attribute to the mosaic. But yeah, I think if they made this like a few years ago, I think it would be a little bit more palatable and hype inducing. But now, I mean, I'll always love a good West Coast IPA. To me, it's like the good anecdote if you're getting a little bit bored of the fruit juice. But this doesn't really quite do it for me. It's almost reminded me of Daisy Cutter as well, which was a little bit underwhelming. It's not a bad beer, okay? I've had much worse examples of West Coast IPA. I've had worse Brewdog beers. But it was promising. I probably put a bit too much hype into it for myself, seeing how it was West Coast, and I love to see West Coast IPAs being brewed now that aren't like classic, already established West Coast style IPAs. But this, it doesn't really taste like experimental or unique. It reminds me of stuff like Jackhammer. You know, I'd much rather have Mr. President from Brewdog for that hoppy West Coast resiny character than this. I think what they've got here is a good recipe, and it could be tweaked in further variations. But it's just got that feeling of like, this already exists from Brewdog. And I'm not going to get all conspiracy theorists like a few beer tubers and say, oh, what are Brewdog doing, just relabeling an already existing recipe. They might be starting on a pre-existing recipe, because there's only so much you can start with in brewing, to be fair. But it's just not really, wow, exciting. It's a solidly enough brewed beer, but I don't need to have another can of this. And yeah, that's really all I can say. So in terms of a rating, I don't want to be too harsh because it's not a bad beer. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It masks the alcohol really nicely, but it's got this like ethanol, herbal, medicinal character which doesn't sit right with me. Definitely going to enjoy the rest of it though. There's like a subtle sherbety character to it. But when you're putting all those hops in there, maybe it's just become a little bit too confused, especially where you're using some of the same hops in different parts of the brewing process. Maybe it's just gone a little bit too overboard, where it just becomes a mishmash of stuff. Because I have experienced that with a lot of these, like, we put 12 different kind of hops in this beer. Why? Surely somewhere along the line, one of those hops will cancel out effects of another hop, or mask, or override, where it just all blends into one gloop. And I sort of get that feeling with this beer. And the disappointment is almost lingering as much as that ethanol. But 6 out of 10, it's pleasant enough, it's drinkable. It's just, after having the Zephyr, which was a really nice singy surprise, to then go to this. Yeah, I mean, I've got one more left, which is the Imperial Stout from the box, which I'm not going to drink tonight because it's a school night. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, I've tasted this beer countless times. That's essentially it. That's the moral of the story. That was a meaty burp, that was not pleasant. So if you've tried this one, or any of the beers from, because by the time you're seeing this, it'll only have had the first fanzine box, because I'm going to try and stay on trend. Hashtag soyboy beer trend. But yeah, I want a bit more, and that's it really. So if you have tried it, then let me know your thoughts, opinions down below. If you like these sorts of West Coast IPAs, then give me some of your recommendations. It could be the classic, already established ones, or it could be some of the breweries coming out now, bringing their own take on the style as a sort of antidote to the haze craze. But yeah, if any of my friends and fellow beer tubers have reviewed this by the time I upload it, the links will be down below. Check out my IPA playlist, check out my Brewdog playlist, check out Brewdog, check out Brewdog Fanzine. I think it's a really interesting project, but I don't want beers like this in the box. I want something new. I'd rather have an experimental beer that misfires than something that's just a little too safe, if that makes sense. That's my critique with this beer. So yeah, take it as you will. And I'm very much looking forward, because I've already got another box on order in this. So I might see how it goes after that selection of beers. But yeah, anyway, I think I've repeated myself about 5 different times in this past 2 minutes. So I'm just going to cut stuff there. Anyway, soy boy out, and I shall hopefully see you later. I was trying to figure something that rhymed with out, but there was an out. There we go. Laters.